Hey everyone, in this video we'll learn how to automate FortiGate firewall using Ansible. So FortiGate use REST API instead of traditional CLI commands, and we will do this in three simple steps. First, we'll install the Ansible collection, then we'll set up an API access and secure our credential using Ansible Vault. And finally, we'll create a playbook to retrieve the system information. Also, we'll see how to deploy firewall policies. So by end of this video, you'll see how to automate the FortiGate firewall from scratch. So let's go straight into the video. Alright, let's start with the step one. We'll head over to the EVNG host first and power on our lab environment. And we'll also start the FortiGate firewall and the Linux node along with the management switch for this demo. So while these devices are booting up, let's figure out how to get the right Ansible collection for the FortiGate. So let's head over to the Ansible documentation page. Under the resource here, select Ansible package documentation. On the left hand sidebar, you can click on using Ansible collections. And here is a collection guide where you will find all the related informations. So collection is basically a bundle of pre-built automation tools. So instead of writing everything from the scratch, you can download the FortiGate collection and get hundreds of ready to use modules. So over here we can see some of the installation commands, and if you want a specific version of collection we can choose those versions as well. Alright, so now the question is, how do we find the right Ansible collection for the FortiGates? So let's head over to Ansible Galaxy, which is an official repository for the collections. So let's click on the collections, search for FortiOS. Great. So we have a couple of collections available. So some are updated by the FortiGate vendor itself, and while others are community driven. So before we select the right one, let's look at the few indicators. Notice the first one have around 707 modules available, and this is the highest among all the options out there. And there are about 13 plugins, which gives an extended functionality for things like connection type, inventory sources. And we'll take a look on this later. And let's click on the first one, which is maintained by the Fortinet directly. So you can see the last update was around 90 days back. So this is very recent and a good sign of active maintenance. On this page, we'll also find the installation details, documentation, and other important informations. So let's explore the documentation tab. So here on the documentation section, you will find the details about all the available modules. And if I scroll down, you will also see 13 plugins listed with their descriptions and the usage details. And there are nearly 1.2 million downloads so far, which shows this is widely used and kind of trusted collections. We can also find the GitHub repository link in case you want to check the source code or contribute. So going back to the installation tab, we can see this collection is designed primarily for firewall and the network automations. And it is currently set for version 6. However, it is forward and backward compatible with a different 40 iOS version, which is great on a mixed environment. And here is the installation command. Let me copy this first, and we can also download the tarball file directly and install it offline if needed. So let's head over to our Ansible control node and install this collection. So we'll open the VS Code and connect the Linux node from the EVNG system. So let me activate our Python virtual environment using the alias we created in our previous video. Perfect. Now we are inside the project directory where we have created the Ansible project. So let me run the installation command here, so which is ansible-galaxy collection install then the fortinet.40ios. Interesting. So it says nothing to do. All the requested collections are already installed. So I actually installed this previously during my lab setup. Now let's verify what is the version we are currently running. So you can use a list command. So we are having version 2.3.8. And if you want to know the exact details about the installation path, you can specify the collection name and give the list command again. So here you can see the collection is installed in so and so path and ready to use. Now let's jump into the step 2 where we can see how to set up API access for the Fortinet. So before we configure the API access, let's quickly understand how FortiGate automation differ what we did with the Cisco routers. So with the Cisco iOS, we used network CLI connection type over SSH. So Ansible literally send the CLI commands like a human typing and parse the text output line by line. However, FortiGate use the HTTP API connection type with a REST API. So instead of CLI command, we send a structured JSON request over HTTPS and get back a clean JSON response. So let's log into the FortiGate GUI for the API token generations. So navigate to system, then go to the administrator tab here. First, we need to create a profile with a read-write access. So go to the admin profile page. We'll grant access for the network, security, and system for now. Then come back to the administrative tag and create a new account. Select REST API admin, then attach the newly created profile. Also, let's restrict the access only from our local networks. So once that is done, we'll get the API key. We need to secure this key immediately since it shows only once. On the next step, we'll store this securely using the Ansible Vault. Now let's work on the step 3 where we'll configure our Ansible project to work with the FortiGate. Remember, we already have our Ansible CFG file configured, which points to our inventory file at inventory/host. So this means that we don't need to specify the inventory path every time we run the playbook. So our first task is to update the inventory file for the FortiGate details. So let me open inventory/host. So we'll add a new group called FortiGates. So under this group, we will define our FortiGate firewall with its host name and the management IP address using the Ansible host variable. So next, I need to define the group variables using the Fortinet column vars. These variables tell Ansible how to connect to FortiGate devices, which include FortiGate OS details, the connection method, and we are also skipping the certificate validations since it is a lab environment, and all these details are available in the video description. Next, we need to define the API token for authentications. So for security, we'll use Ansible Vault to store these sensitive credentials encrypted. So let me create a Vault file. This file must be exactly match our FortiGate hostname. So we'll use Ansible-Vault create. Then we are going to create inside this host var. So host vars / the hostname.yml. So it prompt for setting up a vault password. So we need this every time you run the playbooks. So inside the vault editor, we'll start with 3 hyphen for a proper YAML syntax. Then we'll define the variable like 40 OS underscore API underscore token, then separated with a colon. Then we'll give the API we just got from the GUI. And this variable will be referenced in our playbook shortly. So let's save and exit. And to verify the vault is working, we can use Ansible-Vault view then the file name. This will show the key in clear text after entering the vault password. And if I use a regular cat command on the file, you can see it is completely encrypted. Later, if you want to edit the key value, you can use Ansible-Vault edit command. That is the Ansible Vault setup, a simple yet powerful way to protect sensitive credentials. Now let's verify our inventory is properly configured and the vault variable is accessible. So we'll use Ansible-inventory-list, then the inventory source details. Since we are using the vault encryption, so we'll use a flag called -ask vault pass. So let me enter the vault password. So here we can see all our inventory structure. So under the meta section, we can see our FortiGate with all the variables we defined in the host file, such as connection parameters, SSL settings, and most importantly, the decrypted FortiOS API token from the vault. So under children, we can see both our routers and FortiGate's groups, and the FortiGate firewall hostname is listed under the FortiGate groups. So the inventory looks great. If you want to see the details only for specific host, you can use the host command like this. This shows only the variable information from the FortiGate, much cleaner outputs. And all the variables are passed correctly, including our encrypted API token. So now our inventory is ready. Let's create our first FortiGate playbook to fetch the system informations. So I'll create a new YAML file inside the playbook directory. So let me walk through the key components. First one is the host. This target all the devices in our FortiGate groups. Next is connection. We are going to use HTTP API. Remember, FortiGate use API, not the CLI like Cisco routers. And the gather facts, we are going to set no. We don't need to collect the system facts for the API operations. This will speed up our execution. Collections. This tells the Ansible to use the FortiGate collections we installed earlier. Now here is the most important part, var underscore files with the path of our vault file. This will load our encrypted API token before HTTP connection is established. Based on my testing, without explicitly loading the vault file here, the HTTP connection plugin doesn't have access to the variable during the task execution. So you will get undefined variable error, and you can test this out on your lab and let me know how this goes. So in the task sections, we'll use the monitor fact module. We are passing the access token using our vault variable with the Jinja2 templating. The selector parameters tells the FortiGate we want the system information, and we're going to save this module output to a variable so that we can use it in the next task. And the second task uses the debug module to display the result in the readable format, such as hostname, version, serial number, and model informations. So that's our playbook, simple but effective one. Now let's run this playbook. Since our Ansible CFG is already pointed to the inventory, I can simply run Ansible-playbook, then the playbook file name, then we'll give the vault flag to decrypt the API token. So let's use the vault password. Excellent, the playbook is executed successfully. We can see it is retrieved the system status and displayed our FortiGate informations. And we have fetched the host name, version, serial number along with the model details. So this confirms that Ansible is successfully communicated with the FortiGate via REST API using our encrypted token. Now let's do something more practical. Create a firewall policy. This is a common task network engineers perform daily. So we'll create a new playbook for building a policy. The structure is similar to our first playbook. Same connection method, same vault file loading. For the task, we are going to use firewall underscore policy modules. So let me explain the key parameters. So policy ID is a unique identifier for the policy. Then we are going to give a descriptive name for the AC management. Then we can give the source address and the destination address to match all the source and destination address. Then give the service, allow all the protocols and the ports. The action will be allow the traffic, and then schedule is always, so policy will be active 24/7. And the NAT is critical for the internet access, so translate internal IP to the WAN IP address. You can add the commands for the documentations. So in a nutshell, this policy allow the internal users on the port 2 to access the internet through the port 1 with the NAT enabled. So let's run it and enter the vault password. Alright, notice the result shows changed. This means that Ansible created the policy. So let me verify in the FortiGate GUI. I will navigate to the policy and objects, then the firewall policy. So there it is. We have policy ID 100 named as internal to internet, and you can also see the commands like created by Ansible, and this policy is now active and enforcing the traffic rules. So this is the power of Ansible automation, consistent, repeatable, documented configuration changes. And this makes it more reliable and powerful than traditional SSH-based automations. Alright guys, before we wrap up, the FortiGate automation used REST API with the JSON, not the CLI commands. And you can find all the codes we have used in this video in my GitHub page. So in the next video, we are going to take a different approach. We are going to explore the Fortinet API directly using the Postman. So stay tuned for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon on the next video.